You ever notice we don't get bored anymore? Not the kind of boredom that made us build things out of cardboard boxes or count telephone poles on long car rides, anyway. And here's something wild. In a famous study, 71% of men and 25% of women literally chose electric shocks over sitting alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. We'd actually rather feel pain than be bored. But boredom wasn't something we always avoided. Boredom was part of being alive, and maybe the secret ingredient to creativity. Because when you had nothing to do, your mind started to do something. Remember when we had three channels, maybe four if those rabbit ears cooperated? Saturday morning cartoons ended at noon. After that, you were on your own. Maybe there was a fishing show or some candlepin bowling or some dusty old western your grandfather loved on TV. And then what? What did we do at that time? We invented. We made something out of nothing. We found the house where all the bikes were parked outside and we rode until the streetlights came on. We probably got into some things that we shouldn't, and we definitely didn't follow all the rules. Whole adventures born out of nothing. So, fast forward to summer vacation. You've ridden your bike down every street. You've watched every VHS tape in the collection. And now you're lying on the living room floor in the heat of July just staring at the ceiling. You're actually excited that your mom might go to the grocery store. So you grab some old cardboard boxes and you start building. Maybe it's a spaceship. Maybe it's Kit from Knight Rider. You're not even exactly having fun. You're just doing something because the alternative is doing nothing. And there's the moment boredom turns into creation. Now, the moment silence shows up, we run from it. We go to our phones, we scroll, we swipe, we fill every second. But creativity doesn't come from motion, it comes from the pause, from the quiet moments that used to feel empty. And science backs this up. A 2013 study found that when people were deliberately bored, like really bored, like copying numbers from a phone book board, they became more creative afterward. Their minds had drifted just enough to start connecting new ideas. Dr. Sandy Mann, the psychologist behind the study, found that the bored group destroyed the control group in creative thinking. Boredom literally made them more creative. And there's a name for this. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network, the part of your brain that lights up when you're daydreaming, when you're resting, or doing nothing in particular. That's where imagination lives. Your brain has two main networks, the task positive network where when you're focused, and the default mode network when you're wandering. They can't run at the same time. When one's up, the other's down. Other research shows boredom pushes us towards novelty, to think, to make, to explore. And it's not laziness, it's your brain saying, hey, we need more something meaningful. We need more than this. So when we run from boredom, we're actually cutting off the very process that leads to original thought. So think about your best ideas. They didn't come from multitasking, did they? They didn't come from when you were busy. They came from when your hands were busy, but your mind was free. Maybe you were mowing the lawn, driving. That happens to me a lot. I often have to take notes when I'm driving because I come up with my ideas then. Maybe you were just in your room sitting under those old glow in the dark stars on the ceiling. It was those blank spaces that mattered. They were the breathing room for your imagination. So think about this. Remember being trapped in the back of your grandparents' car on a long trip? Your grandfather said the trip would take about 3 hours. And that sounded good at first, but then once you realized, you're stuck in the back of your grandparents' car for 3 hours, you have no entertainment options, no phone back then, no iPad, probably no in-car entertainment. So your entertainment options were basically, look out the window, look for a sports car. That's probably what I was doing. Count telephone poles. Without that phone or that iPad, you were spectacularly, mind-numbingly bored. And your brain was, doing backflips at that point. You just sit there watching the landscape roll by, making up stories about the other drivers and their cars. You were designing something for your toys at home, imagining some dinosaurs scrolling through the fields outside. You weren't wasting time. That's the key, though. It seemed like it, but you weren't. You were building the cognitive foundation for creativity. What I don't think we realize now is that these blank spaces built us. Waiting used to be part of life. I talked about that in a previous video. Waiting by the phone for a call, waiting for photos to be developed. Everything required patience, and patience meant sitting with your own thoughts. And that's what scientists call the incubation effect. When you stop grinding and you let your mind wander, your subconscious keeps you working on the problem that you have. And it's not just theory. Some of the most famous people in the world have done this. Steve Jobs actually took calligraphy classes in college because he had nothing better to do. That useless boredom shaped some of his early design language. Albert Einstein did thought experience at a slow patent office job. That's where theory of relativity was born. Bill Watterson was a creator of Calvin and Hobbes. Some of you probably know Calvin and Hobbes. I used to love that. Said his best ideas came from during long, aimless walks. These creative people all had one thing in common. They protected their boredom. And creativity needs two phases, input and processing. We're great at input. We're great at consuming. We're great at learning for the most part. We're good at scrolling on our phones, certainly. But we almost never process. We never give our minds time to connect the dots. Now, we simply treat empty moments like a problem that we need to fix instead of an opportunity to think. But the truth is, your best ideas don't come when you're chasing them. Your best ideas come in the shower, on a walk, staring out the window. They come during the rare moments of boredom. And if you're struggling to create, you don't have a creativity problem. You have a boredom deficit. So this week, try getting bored again. No soundtrack, try to scroll a little bit less, find some silence, take a walk without your phone, sit with a cup of coffee, maybe drive with no music. Find 30 minutes and do nothing. You're going to hate it at first. I know I do too. Your hand will look for your phone. It'll itch for it. You'll think of 1,000 productive things you should be doing. Push through that. Stay with the boredom. Let yourself feel as though you were bored like when you were a kid, lying in the living room floor in July. As bored as the time you were waiting by the phone, maybe counting those telephone poles on that long car ride. See what shows up. See what ideas start to grow. That's when creativity wakes up, because your best ideas are hiding in the gaps, waiting in some silence. That bored kid who had nothing to do and no choice but to make something out of nothing, that kid invented who you became. Maybe it's time to let them back in. And if you start watching my videos, you're going to know I talk a lot about going back to the past, but not really going back, just bringing some of those ideas forward. It's not about time travel or time machine stuff. It's because we need to find what used to work. And boredom isn't the enemy. It can be the beginning. You can think about all those times when you grew up and you found boredom, but that led you to creativity. I'm going to keep exploring what the 70s and 80s taught us about slowing down, paying attention, and feeling kind of like we're living in that time again without actually being there. So I hope you try to go get bored this week, kind of like it's 1985 again. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you watching. I really do. This is something new. I talked about it in the last video. I have a lot of content on social media, but these videos are going to be a little bit different. I'm going to take a deeper look into growing up in the 70s and 80s and some of those things that I think that we can move forward to make our lives better today. So I'd love for you to subscribe, and I do appreciate you watching. Give me some comments. Love to have a discussion about this. So again, thanks for watching and spending some time in your glory days.